Hi everybody. Today I'm working in my small altered book journal, and I'm going to start with some magazine scraps to start to build a background and then go from there and end up with this. Come on along. Okay, here we go. This was a total experiment and well, you'll see what happens. I took a stencil from Stamperia. I don't know what the name of it is. That's what I was looking for there. But anyway, it has those clocks and numbers on it. And I taped off the area that I want to put some modeling paste through. And my intention is to make a stamp. So I am just taking the modeling paste. I'm going to put it through the stencil. And I wanted a fairly thick layer because I wanted it to be raised up so that I would get a good stamped impression. So that's what I'm doing here, just getting it spread through and trying to keep a fairly thick and even layer everywhere. You can tell as I'm dipping and dipping in, I have quite a bit. I did want, it to be raised up quite a bit. I didn't want to scrape it through like I normally would, so that you can see the stencil and you have a lower relief. I wanted a higher elevation, if you will. So that's what I was going for. And pulled it up very slowly, and I did go outside a little bit, but I can get that cleaned up. Now, rather than waste the excess modeling paste, I grabbed a piece of book paper, and I am just going to scrape the excess through the stencil, just wiping off the excess that is accumulating on my palette knife. And I'm going to get another impression on this book page. I just didn't want to waste the modeling paste. So that's how I normally would do it, and I get a much lower relief. And then there's still modeling paste, so rather than waste it, I just turn that stencil over, and I'm just going to just push the rest of it around underneath the stencil and onto this piece of stamped tissue paper. Just so, I can get some white onto that paper and use up that little bit of modeling paste that's on my stencil. Plus it makes it a lot easier to clean up my stencil when there's not gobs of modeling paste on it. I don't have to take it to the sink. I can wipe it off with the baby wipe. So that's what I did there. And just some texture on that paper. And I'm just going to set all of this stuff aside to dry. I was going to try and scrape that off, the excess off, but I was just making a mess with the palette knife. So I just grabbed a fresh, wet baby wipe, and I'm just cleaning up the edge there. And that's all there is to it. A little bit of excess on the other side, and now it's gone. So we will come back to this once it's dry. So you can see the relief there on the photo on the right, and if you notice, the center part of that clock was higher than the rest of it. And this little clip was in time lapse, so it ended up going way too fast, so I tried to slow it down, and that's why it looks like that. But anyways, that didn't work, so live and learn. I'll use that for something else at some point. So, but I still have the one on the book page. So I grabbed this altered book journal that it just has a few pages left, and I have some black gesso, and I'm just going to cover these 2 pages with the black gesso just to get a ground color down and prep the pages. And once I got that side prepped with the gesso, I just took a baby wipe just to get a little bit of the text showing back through, and just kind of wipe some of the gesso back a little bit here and there. And I'm going to do the same thing on this side. And I just dried that off really well. Then I went through my stash of magazine images, and I found a polka dotted blouse, 2 boots that had round gold rivets, a white pair that had black rivets, and a black pair that had gold rivets. And then a lipstick ad, I think it's lipstick or some kind of eye pencil, that just showed the pencils from the top so that there's those pops of red and pink. So I just ripped them up into random pieces and glued them all down. Now I'm going to take some white gesso and push all of that back just to kind of bring everything together more so that it just doesn't look like a whole bunch of magazine scraps. Starting to build the background here. So I'm not looking at these magazine images as what they were, but rather pieces of color and pattern and texture. And then just kind of wiping back and adding texture into the gesso with that wet baby wipe. And then doing the same thing on the other page. So now we've got a good start. Now I can kind of see, yeah, this is going to work. I'm liking it. I like the little pops of the reds coming through, and then the shadows of the dark. Now we just have some black acrylic paint and a very wet brush. And I'm just going to apply 1 coat of juicy black paint all over this page. I know you're thinking, what are you doing? You just did that and now you're covering it all up with black, but we have to build the layers. So I'm bringing in this stencil. It's a dilution stencil. I think it's called Small Circles. And I have a wet baby wipe, and I'm just going to wipe out the black paint from within the openings of the stencil to let the colors underneath show through. I really like where it's headed at this point. I'm happy with it because I can see where it'll end up in my head. I kind of think I know where it's going to end up, and I like the way it looks. There's just a lot of texture. So rather than put paint on the other page, I'm just using the paint that's left on the stencil and in the baby wipe to apply it to that other page. So I have 2 pages that are coordinating, but one is dark and one is light. And then I just took my roll of paper towels and rolled across it to just kind of pick up more or less some of the excess paint that's laying on top, just to make the drying time go faster. Didn't really change the look of the page that much. Now I'm bringing back that clock that I put onto the book page with the excess modeling paste, and I had just taken a red art crayon and some water and just kind of tinted it off and got kind of a pink color. And I'm just going to put it down on the page with some matte medium. Since I couldn't use my stamp, I used my book page. I used that wooden piece with the clock on it for something somewhere along the line and just end up in my wood stash. One more thing, just what I needed. I thought it was a good idea, but I think it would have worked if that center part hadn't come out much higher than the numbers and the outline of the clock. It just, nothing else was touching the paper. So that's all dry, and I have some Ceram Coat acrylic in the color bright red, and I'm just going to hit the high spots of that modeling paste with the paint on my finger, and then just kind of randomly make it darker in some spots, and I'll carry some of that red paint out onto the page as well. Because, you know, I don't want to waste that paint, so might as well get it on there, right? So I went through my stash of ephemera, and this is what I chose for my focal points. So I played around with it quite a while to kind of get it laid out the way I want it. I'm just going to go through this all and glue it all down with gel matte medium. And when I'm choosing the focal points, I'm looking for color that will coordinate with my background. I'm looking for graphics that I like. I'm looking for a variety in, like, if there's text, I want large text and small text. Just, you know, kind of a variety so that everything doesn't look, it's like not all the same size. It doesn't all have the same text size on it. It's not all the same color, but yet the colors do coordinate with my background. And I just play with all the pieces until I get them how I like them. So those are all glued down and dried off. And now I have a fine liner with high flow acrylic in Titan Buff. And I'm just going to do some asemic writing down this page edge here. And when I do this, I do have words in my head and that I think I'm scribbling on, even though they don't look like words. But I find if I don't think about a phrase or think about words as I'm doing it, it just doesn't turn out as good. So if you've tried it and you don't like it, try thinking of like an actual phrase and pretend you're writing it, but be really, really sloppy about it. And that works better. Now I have my other fine liner with the black high flow acrylic, and I'm just putting some more writing across that top of the other page. And even though it's not the same, it helps kind of tie the two pages together a little bit more. And you don't have to put the deli paper on. I like the way it looks when it's a little bit smeared and kind of diffused, and it also dries faster when I do that. So that's why I do that. And then rather than using my Stabilo pencil, I decided to just grab that black art crayon. It basically works the same, but I didn't need water. It's softer than the Stabilo, it's less waxy, and it moves easier. So I was kind of just ready to be done with this. And so rather than mess with the brush and water, I just knew I could spread this out with my finger. So just getting a bit of a shadow behind the focal points and those little ephemera collages, just to help those stand out from the background a little bit, helps push the background back. And then just took a baby wipe and kind of smeared it in places where I felt it was a little too heavy. And then finally I just have my white Posca pen, which is it's an acrylic paint pen. And I'm just doing a freehand kind of wavy line all the way around the outside of both of the pages. And I think that that just helps bring it together like it's one piece rather than two pages. And then I just decided to go around and put some little hash marks along the edges here and there. And that's it. So that's how you can build a background starting just with some magazine scraps. Just pick some coordinating colors, some lights and darks, and some pops of bright colors, and start there and just build it up with stencils and stamps or whatever you want, paint. So I'm happy with it. It was a fun one to do, except for the stamp that didn't work, but that's okay. Live and learn, right? I had it thicker in the middle. So if you enjoyed this, I'd appreciate it if you would share it out to a friend or Facebook group. Subscribe to my channel if you haven't yet. I try to upload new videos at least twice a week. And hit the like button. And in the meantime, go make some art. Bye.